Thank you everyone so much for joining. We're really excited to be hosting this webinar at Celonis with PwC to talk about accelerating business outcomes by leveraging the power of process mining and automation in the journey to frictionless operations. While process mining and automation can be successfully deployed across many functions and processes today, we're going to take a deep dive into exploring how these technologies can help to achieve key business goals in procurement. And we have just a few housekeeping notes as we get started. So this session will be recorded, and the recording will be shared with you after the call. There will be time that's reserved at the end of the presentation for Q&A. So if you do have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to have those submitted through the GoToWebinar panel on the right side of your screen. And all attendees will be muted throughout the session. So Christian, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you very much, Divya. So warm welcome from my side and from PwC. My name is Christian Bartmann and I'm part of the Finance Transformation Initiative throughout PwC's network. I'm a partner in the Frankfurt office, and also I'm leading the Process Mining Competence Center here in Germany. And I'm happy to have so many attendances from all over the world. We counted before and how many countries we have actually online, and there were more than 20. So good morning, good afternoon, and for the ones who are already at night, good night too. I hope you have an exciting few minutes in front of you.
Hi, my name is Jan Turein. Warm welcome from my side as well. I'm from CIO Advisory within PwC Germany, and my ambition is to support companies in their digital transformations. And process mining has become a very powerful tool to support exactly that.
Great. My name is Divya Krishnan, and I'm a product marketing manager at Celonis and a subject matter expert for frictionless procurement, working with our clients across the world to optimize their procurement processes to achieve their business goals. Actually, prior to Celonis, I was a management consultant like Jan and Christian myself for several years, working with clients to drive business transformations across procurement, finance, manufacturing, and other areas. I'm very happy to be here today with Christian and Jan for this webinar to talk about how we're helping clients be successful together. It's really great for us at Celonis to have partners like PwC to work with to ensure customer success. So if we can go to the next slide, I'd like to just take a little bit of an opportunity to introduce Celonis to those of you who may not be quite familiar with who exactly we are and what it is that we do and what process mining is. So Celonis started off as the first commercial process mining vendor many years ago. Now we now have a solution called the Intelligent Business Cloud that brings the power of process mining technology to companies across the globe. So we support clients across industries. Today's webinar is focused on procurement, but we do have a number of clients who are streamlining their order management. We're improving customer experience or optimizing working capital with the same underlying technology. Here at Celonis, we believe that process is the engine of experience, and our goal is to turn processes into extraordinary experiences for everyone. As you can see, it's a really exciting time for us to be working with more and more companies to leverage the power of process mining to achieve business goals. If we can connect to the next slide, this really is an illustration of what process mining technology looks like and the way in which it works with Celonis. So just a brief introduction. Every step that takes place in your IT systems, like creating a purchase order, is a time-stamped activity that takes place within that system. Process mining takes that existing system data, recreates the steps of a unique identifier into an event log, and mines it to visualize and analyze your processes in real time. Celonis also leverages machine learning and AI to drive predictive capabilities and recommend and execute next best actions based on those insights. So Celonis is able to connect through our powerful event collection capability to source systems of any kind of IT system. So if that's SAP, if that's Coupa, if that's Oracle, it doesn't matter if it's legacy or homegrown. All of that information is collected into our intelligent business cloud, where very quickly the extraction and the transformation of that data takes place. And then, as you can see here on the slide, we then have our methodology around discovering, enhancing, and monitoring processes. The discovery piece involves getting an objective visual representation of the end-to-end process and finding bottlenecks and inefficiencies, what we at Celonis call friction, that takes place within that process. So if something is slowing you down, it's costing you money, it's likely also leading to a poor employee or a customer experience. And the goal in process discovery is to get the full picture in real time of how that's really taking place. Enhancing addresses the core belief at Celonis that we want to be able to enable more intelligent decision making and more proactive issue resolution. So we have a product capability called the Action Engine, which is continuously monitoring processes to detect these variations from the proper process and practically approach users or even trigger actions in the source system directly with a next best action recommendation. So scanning a process, finding an inefficiency, and prioritizing what should be worked on and taking the action directly, so converting from insight to impact. Monitoring is really about ensuring that you continuously have your finger on the pulse when it comes to understanding the impact of your initiative and being able to show and prove the desired effect on your organization and the business outcomes. This also allows you to take further action should you find that there's a new issue that needs to be addressed, and it ensures that you're consistently driving to the optimal business outcomes. At the very top of the screen, what you see is that if you want to improve working capital or on-time delivery or customer onboarding or purchasing productivity, we have pre-built packages of content that pull together across our discovering, enhancing, and monitoring capabilities that can really accelerate your ability to solve targeted challenges in those areas. So with that overview of Celonis and of process mining, I will hand it over to Christian to introduce PwC.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, for those who probably thinking, why is PwC partnering with Celonis and why are we here together in a call? A few thoughts to that. So in the past, a professional firm like us were actually dependent on a lot of young colleagues who are going to the client, doing a lot of interviews and trying to get insights out by asking a lot of questions and applying their knowledge and their experience from other clients. And that was a very long and manual type of work. But since a few years, since we are having the possibility to use process mining, we can actually deliver a much more better quality of work in a much shorter time frame. And we can turn these insights that we gain through process mining into real business value. And that's why I'm happy to partner with Celonis to have these joint webinar to demonstrate it to you how we do this in the area of automation. But to broaden a little bit the perspectives on that, it's only one area where you can use this kind of technology. In the moment, there's a lot of talk about ERP transformation, especially in the SAP area. And that's also an area where process mining helps a lot, since you can compare the to-be process with the reality before you roll out a template, for example. The efficiencies that you can discover or potential of efficiencies Divya just touched. What we will do in the next few minutes is like focusing solely on this process automation potential. But never forget, there's a lot of stuff out there where you can use this kind of technology. And why is it so good to bring both competencies together? The competencies of a software developer that were one of the first in the market and a professional firm like PricewaterhouseCoopers. It's actually the different competencies that everybody can bring to the table. We are like for years in different industries, the people who help clients in getting better in their processes. We have deep financial knowledge, we have deep knowledge about the business processes, and to combine this with a software from, for example, from Celonis is a really big game changer. If you switch to the next slide, there are 3 things that we want to point out today, and that are probably the 3 takeaways that you should focus on. First, how can process mining help you to transform your business, specifically today in the purchase to pay area? How is it used, and how it can contribute on this journey that usually a lot of companies have already started? And a very important part is, what are the key learnings from projects that are already running or that were done in the past? We will touch that too, because there are a few things that we all have learned, and you don't have to go through the same stuff again by taking a few tips on board. But now, switching to the topic, purchase to pay, a few things to start with, and it's based on a study from McKinsey this year. So only 60% of the procurement leaders think that only 60% have limited view on what's happening in their processes. So there's a lot of undiscovered areas where they don't know what's going on, and that also leads to the idea that based on the study, there could be probably an increased productivity by 40% of what's happening today. And this, in a time where economy is probably not the hottest, is a huge thing we can work on, and that's actually what the clients ask us a lot. Please give us insights that we don't have beforehand, but combine it immediately with actions, how we can get better, how we save money, how we do a better service to our customers. And that will actually lead through the next few minutes that Jan will present to you.
Thanks for the introduction, Christian and Divya. Yeah, let me take over here, and let's continue with the topic of automation. So automation really is an essential part for digital transformations. The benefits are obvious. It helps reduce errors, decrease throughput time, increase customer satisfaction, and save costs. So in the next 20 minutes, I'd like to show you how to make your automation journey a success. Well, as you can see here on the slide, the automation solutions are really diverse, and there's this current trend topic of RPA, robotic process automation, and fair enough, this really is a solution that's quite easy to implement, as it just mimics user behavior on the user interface without changing anything in the background in the system. So this is why it's become so popular at the moment with the 3 major vendors, including UiPath, Blue Prism, and Automation Anywhere. Of course, if you add some more intelligent automation solutions, then really the potentials are endless. And yeah, you can really achieve a lot more by including AI and machine learning to that. However, let's not forget there are also simpler ways to automate. And these ways to automate are often much closer at hand. For example, if you look at smart ERP or CRM configuration with the standard functionality. Here, one example that is in use with many companies, of course, is EDI connections. And there are also many other quick wins that can be achieved by using the standard functionality. Then if we go to implementing business process management platforms, here then we are able to manage and streamline the process in a much more holistic way. So for example, vendors like Pega, Appian, and Signavio, they offer automation solutions as well, such as next best activities and so on. So this is just a quick overview of the different ways to use for automation. And it's our recommendation to not just go with a hype topic that's currently going on. So now you know that there are so many solutions out there. Let's take a look at how to actually and where to apply these automation potentials. So let's do a deep dive here into the purchase to pay process. And let's take a look at the very generic process steps. This is perform procurement, let's handle receiving, process invoice, and then process payment. And as you can see, highlighted in yellow, there are several typical automation potentials that we usually discuss with our clients. But let's take a more detailed look at what are specific use cases. And I've mentioned here already for the activity create purchase order that this is a great use case for smart EDI connections. As I said, standard functionality is already at hand with most ERP systems, and it has a great impact on the business performance. That's the one automation solution. Let's jump to the next automation solution, and that's a more intelligent way for automation. It's OCR, invoice scan, to really bridge the disruption from paper to the digitized system, and also create a digitized version of the invoice to then automatically classify the invoice and route it to the relevant cost center, or even to direct it to the employee. This is a more intelligent way to automate an activity. And then let's also take a look at the third example, and this is an RPA example to automatically check for duplicates before the payment is actually run. And this is something that most employees would like to get rid of, because it's a very tedious manual work and it can easily be automated via RPA software. So these are a few automation potentials. And for us, it's important to bring in our process expertise to really find the best automation potentials, but also bring in best practices from other processes and from other industries that we are seeing. So now the question is how to start your automation initiatives. In our discussions with clients, we often ask how they approach their automation initiatives. And about roughly 50% of them say that it's the typical approach to brainstorm those activities that no one really likes to do manually and everyone wants to get rid of. This is perfectly fine to have a first collection of different use cases, and then these companies typically go ahead and start first automation pilots. This is great to show quick wins and first lighthouse projects. However, once you start building more pilots and becoming more mature with your automation, it's really good advice to take a step back and look at the topic more holistically. So here we're quoting Bill Gates, who said that automation applied to an efficient operation will magnify the efficiency. Automation applied to an inefficient operation will magnify the inefficiency. So our advice here really is that it's advisable to take a step back and also look at the process context before you actually start automating activities. Because what can happen? If you automate an activity, this might be performed in a more efficient way, but you should also look at if there might be bottlenecks created afterwards, or if this activity actually causes rework activities afterwards. So our advice is really to use process mining as a tool to support your automation initiatives and gain process transparency first before upscaling your automation initiatives. Because what are the challenges here in this context? First of all, there's low process transparency, and Christian has mentioned it already. For processes, typically we had to conduct a lot of process a lot of interviews and workshops with process experts. This was a very time-consuming activity. Furthermore, documentation was available only, very on a very abstract way, or it was not available at all. And also, these opinions that we achieved from interviews and workshops were also quite subjective and could even be conflicting opinions between the different process stakeholders. So process mining really helps to overcome this challenge, and it is a much faster approach. You can cut the duration for process analysis from roughly 3 months in a traditional way to about 5 weeks today with process mining. And on top of that, the insights are a lot more objective than before. We can also see complex process environment. That's because the system and enterprise architectures are becoming a lot more heterogeneous. This makes it a lot harder to understand the process context as well. It's automation of wrong process steps, as I've mentioned already. You might be able to automate one activity, but what happens really to the end-to-end process performance after this automated step? And fourth challenge is also inefficient automation solutions. This is what I touched on before. Many companies jump on a current hype topic without taking a look at other solutions that might be even easier to handle. So for these challenges, we see process mining has become a very powerful tool to support the automation journey. And it does that by visualizing the data and the as-is processes as they're really run. We can also detail the analysis and find process inefficiencies and their root causes. And this is very important to us, we can quantify what are the business cases behind the optimization measures. So let's take a look at an exemplary dashboard that we typically create in automation assessments. Here you can see that all relevant dimensions are covered. It's top left, full process transparency that we gain by analyzing the as-is processes from end to end. It's top right, the identification of manual hotspots. So really identify those activities that have the largest business impact after an automation initiative. But we also consider standardization levels. So, because standardization is an important factor that tells us how feasible the automation is. So for that, it's important to look at what actually happens before and after the activity. And last but not least, we want to quantify the automation potentials. And thanks to process mining tools such as Celonis, it's really possible to look at the data from all angles and quantify the business impact. After this bit of theory, let's not just tell, but also show. And let's jump over to a live demo of automation dashboards that we created. So we are looking at a generic or sample purchase to pay process here with over 1 million purchase orders. Here, the process steps or the activities are create purchase requisition item, create purchase order item, send purchase order, receive goods, scan invoice, and book invoice. So a very straightforward process here that everyone can relate to. This is the happy path. We can not only look at the most frequent variant, but we are also able to look at other variants. For example, the second most frequent variant here in this case, here the requisition item is skipped and the process starts directly with create purchase order item. We have Also a process anomaly here, and we can see a price change, which is typically a very manual process step, and this is definitely something we would look at more closely in an automation assessment. And let's look at one other variant, and this is a typical case of maverick buying. So where the purchase department is skipped at the beginning, the invoice is scanned directly, and only then the invoice or the purchase order item is created, and the process goes on as it is modeled here. So this is just to give you an overview of our very generic purchase to pay process. But let's look at our focus topic today. Let's look at the automation. And we can see that the overall automation rate is 48%, which is, depending on the industry, quite a good rate. However, we can see large differences when it comes to the activities and their automation rates. So for example, we can see a highly automated activity such as send purchase order, an automation rate of 71%. But we can also see other activities that are a lot more manual. For example, create purchase order item with only 28% of automation rate. How do we even identify automation rate? That's given, for example, in SAP by the data and the user type that's documented and documented in the system after each activity. So after looking at these different automation rates within the activities, we can plot an automation potential heat map. This heat map that you can see here on the right shows the 2 dimensions of manual rate. So which activities are highly manual? The further they are on the top, the more manual they are. And we also have the other dimension, and that's how many manual activities are there for one activity. And in this case, we should really focus on the activities that are in the top right corner. And this is, for example, create purchase order item. Has a manual rate of 72%, and this is really the activity that is conducted in a manual way in most cases. So this is a large potential for automation. So let's keep this activity in mind, and let's also take a look at standardization. As mentioned, we shouldn't just jump on one activity and start an automation project out of it, but we should also take a look at the context. With context here, we mean we should look at what are the activities that happen before and what are the activities that happen after this certain automation potential. So upstream and downstream activities. In this case, this is just an example of the activity receive goods. We can see that there's one more frequent upstream activity, which is send purchase order, but there are also quite a few other activities, such as price change or receive order confirmation, that also happen frequently before goods received. You can also see this here in the diagram, where receive goods has a lot of connections, especially before the goods received. Afterwards, it's quite streamlined with 2 activities such as scan invoice and book invoice. But let's take a look at the activity with the highest automation potential in terms of its volume. This was, as we recall, create purchase order item. And here we can see a higher standardization level. We can see that mostly the activity create purchase order has the upstream activity create purchase requisition item. And it usually leads to the activity send purchase order. So this shows us that this activity it should be more feasible for automation, because the rules that need to be programmed, for example, for a bot, are easier to handle compared to processes that have many upstream and downstream activities. So after this very brief automation potential assessment, we can go ahead and evaluate the total savings of automating this activity. In this case, for our more than 800,000 manual activities, we can also give an average processing time and an estimated automation potential. We can give an annual salary of the employee who is conducting this activity and a typical yearly amount of days this person is working. Of course, these 4 input criteria, they have to be asked, and they have to be discussed in workshops together with the process owners. And in this particular case, with a processing time of 2 minutes and an automation potential of 50%, we can easily, for this sample data, generate cost savings of up to 400,000 euros a year. And this is a number that is quite realistic from the projects that we've done so far. With that, I hope I could give you a very practical view of our dashboards and our approach of process mining analysis in this context. But let me also give you a real life example. So a classical success story from a project that we've done for an energy provider. And here we identify automation potentials within the purchase to pay process. And we were able, with this analysis, to really show very high saving potentials in a very short amount of time. The project duration was really short, especially if you compare it to the traditional approach of workshops and interviews. In this case, we identified an automation rate of only under 30%, which is quite low, but of course we have to keep in mind the industry background. With only 4 activities, actually showed an automation rate of more than 20%. So because of this situation, we were really able to show a lot of activities that have an automation potential. And we prioritized 5 different ones based on the volume and automation feasibility. Some examples for that were an automated clearing after a successful 3-way match. We also identified the opportunity to prioritize invoices via RPA to maximize cash discounts, and also an intelligent invoice routing to the specific cost center that was responsible for the invoice. With these 5 selected automation activity or automatable activities, we were able to predict cost savings of 500,000 euros per year. And this, of course, was a lot higher than the effort spent on the process mining analysis, and really proved that process mining can be a great guide to initiate automation projects. So if we could get you excited with our approach to use process mining for your automation journey, this is our suggested approach to start. Usually, and this is very important for us, we start with a comprehensive process understanding, and this includes the process landscape, the system architecture, the pain points, and current and ongoing automation initiatives that the client has. This can be done via design thinking workshops, and is usually a very relevant basis for the next phases, especially for the process mining analysis. This is step 2, to gain process insights and to really quantify the automation potentials in terms of ROI. The client is then able to base the decisions on facts to really decide which automation initiatives prove to have the highest automation potential and then go ahead with these ones. Process mining can also support in during and after the implementation by monitoring bot performance or automation performance in general and see where to adjust some automation implementations. And this enables you to continuously upscale your automation initiatives and also build a strategy and a governance around it. With these 5 steps, you should really be well prepared for an automation journey. And I hope that we could really show that these 2 technologies, process mining as well as automation, are really a great way to combine and also to make automation journeys a success. With that, I hand over to the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jan. It was a really interesting and fascinating deep dive story that you took us through, so appreciate that. I'd like to move to some of the questions that have come in from the audience over the course of the webinar. So the first is, does Celonis work only with procurement processes? And I will let Jan and Christian speak to that in a little detail from their experience from PwC.
Yeah, so to step in here, definitely no. So we use this kind of technology in a variety of business processes. Purchase to pay is usually an easy one to demonstrate things because everybody quite relates to that kind of process where you buy things and you have to pay a bill. But there's also the next one, order to cash, that probably comes on number 2. But there's a variety of processes that are happening or that are good for process mining in the financial area, but also you can think about processes that happen somewhere else. The HR process, for example, is a good one where you probably want to measure how long it takes till an application gets processed and the people get hired, or if you think about expenses. On the production side, topics come in like warehouse management, time critical delivery, for example, goods that have not such a good shelf life, and you want to make sure that they arrive on the customer side in a good timing. So wherever you have a process that has a good start and a good end, an end-to-end process that has an item that gets transactionized through this, and you can identify it, it's a good process to use it. And the last probably comment to it, it should be a process where things happen a lot. So if it only happens 3 or 4 times a year, it's not a good process to use this kind of technology. You might be faster in this case to do it manually. For all the other ones, it's quite a good technology.
Thank you, Christian. Yes, just to add to everything that he said, we do have a number of customers, across a variety of industries that use Celonis for everything from optimizing customer experience and helping to streamline managing issues with customer complaints, all the way through to helping to better organize order management or to accelerate throughput in production. So the fundamental technology for process mining is something that can be leveraged to solve business challenges across a range of functions.
And probably to add one
yes.
thing, the history of Celonis actually started in visualizing the IT ticketing service in one company. So totally away from a financial area, it was like an IT process that was visualized the first.
Yes. So the next question that we have is, if we have multiple ERP systems, is that a problem for Celonis? And the answer is not at all. This is a very common concern, but we have several customers at Celonis, and PwC also works with several customers using our technology who have several ERP systems. Some, I can think of one at least that has at least 70. And Celonis is built to manage for not only that, but also the use of legacy systems and homegrown systems. So from a technical perspective, that is not a problem at all. All right. The next question, technically, sort of what is the integration between RPA bots and Celonis? How do they work together? So great question. I think really there are sort of four primary ways in which Celonis integrates with RPA. So the first would be that Celonis can scan existing system processes, as we saw Jan take us through today, to identify and quantify automation potential. Second, during bot implementation, Celonis can support click discovery by visualizing and analyzing manual desktop processes based on screen recorder data. So understanding user click paths and the most common variants to really help design the optimal bot. Celonis can also learn from past process data and leverage our action engine to automatically trigger tasks for bots and to increase bots' efficiency by integrating them with our process analytics within the Intelligent Business Cloud. And finally, from a monitoring standpoint, you can collect bot activity to further analyze and improve the process. So we have integrations available to many of the RPA vendors platforms out there to enable us to directly extract that data, and can help ensure that the deployment is not only guided to the right areas, but is also as successful as possible when implemented. Christian, I don't know if you or Jan have any additional comments you'd like to share there from your experience.
Jan, you want to add something?
Technically, RPA bot data can easily be connected into the Celonis system. And so bot performance can really be monitored continuously. So this is really a great advantage to that, to the whole Celonis ecosystem, I guess.
Great, thank you. And the next question is, does process mining allow for real-time process monitoring, or is it only a snapshot? It does in fact allow for real-time process monitoring. It extracts the data live from your systems as the processes are running. So it relies upon the timestamp data that's available there. Jan, do you want to comment here as well?
Well, that really depends on the project approach. Typically, within process mining projects, we take a snapshot of historical data. Of course, this time frame of data should be large enough to have a clear view on how the process is run. And then we can build, we can assess the process, develop automation potentials or business process improvement potentials in general. So from the dashboards we were just showing, this was a historical snapshot of sample data. But of course, as you mentioned in the introduction as well, Celonis provides the opportunity to measure real-life data and real-life processes as well.
And to add on that, I usually compared with an example from the medicine. The one is like a static X-ray you apply on a specific set of data, but the real power kicks in if you use it as a real-time X-ray with all the possibilities that you can actually build in. For example, saying that if there's a threshold that is not hold, or another limit or an activity that is defined as this should not happen, you can define email rules that somebody gets notified. On a dashboard, something gets highlighted, and you can really real-time monitor a process. And this kind of approach is widely used for the internal audit area, but also, again, in areas where you need a real-time view on processes because you want to make sure that the customer is happy or that the production works in the right way. And if things stop here, you don't want to deal with the problems that result on it later. So different things to consider if you want to have only like a snapshot look, how is my process running? probably compare to other industries, then you do it once. If you really want to improve your process continuously and even monitor it continuously, then you use this kind of technology as an integrated solution in your system environment.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. We have another question that asks if Celonis can provide automatic alerts to users, such as if within the procurement process, the invoice has not been submitted after a certain time, say 3 days, does the user get alerted automatically? And the answer there is that yes, this is a functionality that is available within our action engine to be able to intelligently monitor how the process is running and say, in this case, if an invoice has not been submitted past the time that would be expected, that an alert can be triggered to remind the user for the necessary action to take place. Okay. I think another question that came through was around the overall approach of the 5 slides. So Jan, if you want to go back to the slide that I think was just before this. Yes, so in this slide, where does process mining fit in?
Well, process mining fits in 2 phases, I would say. So definitely concrete steps of process mining is done here in step number 2, process insights. So here we use the knowledge and our understanding of the process environment from step 1 and conduct the process mining analysis. So this is where the data is modeled within Celonis and is analyzed within Celonis. We are developing our dashboards and deriving recommendations for business process or business process automation improvements. After step this leads to step number 3, the fact-based decision making. But then I would say that process mining is also a great tool to monitor the automation implementation process to see if bots perform in a way that was indicated and defined in the business cases. So this is the continuous part of process mining. And these are the 2 phases where I can see process mining, where I can see the most benefits of it.
Great, thank you very much. I think there's another question about the types of companies that process mining is applicable for. Jan and Christian, do you want to speak to that from your experience?
So I saw the question too, and probably the most interesting variety of this question is it only applicable for huge companies or for small companies? To be honest, there is no rule. There are, for example, mid-sized hospitals that you can consider as a company who use process mining to actually optimize their processes in regards to bed occupation, because that's how they make their money with. On the other hand, there are like global players who use it in their warehouse or in their procurement area. And it really depends on the type of business and the type of potential that that the customer thinks is in their current business. But to be honest, we have all of these clients from different industries in our portfolio. Also, and I think that was another question, financial institutes, insurance companies, banks use it too, even in an environment where there are not so many standardized ERP systems or self-customized systems. Even then it makes sense in regards to, for example, mortgage deals or other questions that come up there. So I would say a big variety of industries and sizes of company are using it nowadays.
Great, thank you. And I think we'll just have time for just about one last question. And that is, do we have any lessons learned from prior projects for what makes for a success story? Christian, do you want to take that?
Yeah, thank you, Divya. So one thing that we have learned throughout all these projects was that it has to be the right setup. The top management has to be informed, and they have to be driving this kind of idea as like a broader project, not only process mining. It should be an integrated part of, for example, process excellence, and not only focusing on one specific area of purchase to pay. That's probably a good start, but also immediately starting from the beginning to extend it later on if you really want to have success with such a technology. And the other big success factor is that you have to focus on the people and the change culture. There is usually this consistent picture that people don't want to change how they work and are even afraid of changes. And if you think about like a technology that gives more insights, and on these insights there's probably a potential for automation, people are hesitant to buy in and think, oh, that probably puts my job into danger. And this kind of setup is always important to take into account where it happens. If you do it in Europe, you always have a workers' council, and it's a different setup if you do it probably in the States or somewhere else. And that's what you have to consider there. And to give you a practical example, what really amazed me was one customer who had an employee who did for more than 20 years asset accounting, especially depreciation, and was very good. So she did it on a manual way, but very repetitive and not very, I would say, tasks that made her happy, but she was very good in it. And they asked her to say, your task is for the next half year to help us to automate your task with new technology. And in the end, this meant that she is working on getting rid of her own old job description. But since they actually said, don't worry about this, we have a job position ready for you. If you do this, your job will change. Yeah, you will probably be more in a controlling position, overseeing what's happening on dashboards. She totally lost this anxious behavior, really worked hard on bringing the story to a success, and that's what was like a great move from the company, that they considered how an employee who is needed to give the input feels inside, and is not afraid to lose the job. So these are the 3 takeaways and lessons learned that I want to share.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Christian. Thank you so much, Jan. And thank you to everybody who joined today. We really appreciate your taking the time from your schedule to join us for today's presentation and to learn a little bit more about how you can leverage process mining and automation. Thank you.
Thanks from my side too. You see our contact details. Feel free to reach out to us, and probably happy to talk to you soon again.
Yes.
Thank you. Have a great day.